It's a shape recognized the world over. An elegant curve of wing, a powerful heart, a snarl of defiance in the sky. Even decades after its guns fell silent, the mere mention of its name evokes images of desperate dogfights, courage against the odds, and a nation's will to survive. We're talking, of course, about the Supermarine Spitfire. But beyond the legend, beyond the almost mythical status, lies a story of innovation, desperation, constant evolution, and the sheer engineering brilliance that created arguably the most iconic fighter aircraft in history. This isn't just about a plane, it's about the people who designed it, built it, flew it, and how this remarkable machine helped shape the course of World War II. The story begins not with military specifications, but with speed. Pure, unadulterated speed. Reginald Joseph Mitchell, the chief designer at Supermarine Aviation Works, was a man obsessed with aerodynamics. His genius had already been proven on the international stage with a series of stunning racing seaplanes built to compete for the prestigious Schneider Trophy. These weren't military machines, they were thoroughbreds designed for one purpose: to be the fastest aircraft over water. Mitchell's S.6B racer, for instance, captured the trophy outright for Britain in 1931 and later set a world airspeed record of over 400 miles per hour. This relentless pursuit of aerodynamic perfection, learned in the high-stakes world of air racing, provided the foundation upon which the Spitfire would be built. When the British Air Ministry issued Specification F.7/30 in 1934, calling for a new 8-gun monoplane fighter capable of at least 250 miles per hour, Mitchell's initial response, the Type 224, was underwhelming. It was a gull-winged, open-cockpit design powered by a Rolls-Royce Go-Shock engine, and frankly, it wasn't much of a leap forward. Mitchell himself was dissatisfied. He knew he could do better. Ignoring the specifications' constraints, Supermarine, backed by its parent company Vickers Armstrong, embarked on a private venture, designated Type 300. Mitchell went back to the drawing board, incorporating the hard-won lessons from his racers. The most defining feature emerged: the elliptical wing. This wasn't just for aesthetics, though it certainly looked beautiful. Designed by Beverly Shenstone, a Canadian aerodynamicist on Mitchell's team, the thin, gracefully curved wing offered significant advantages. It provided the lowest possible drag for the required wing area needed to house the armament, fuel, and retractable landing gear. Its shape also distributed stress efficiently, making it incredibly strong. Mitchell combined this with a stressed skin, all-metal construction, a relatively new technique, using innovative flush or sunken rivets to keep the surface incredibly smooth, further reducing drag. This meticulous attention to aerodynamic detail promised exceptional speed and handling. But an airframe, no matter how advanced, needs a heart. Mitchell found it in the revolutionary new engine being developed by Rolls-Royce, the PV-12. This liquid-cooled V12 engine, soon to be immortalized as the Merlin, promised over 1,000 horsepower, a staggering figure for the time. The marriage of Mitchell's sleek airframe and Rolls-Royce's powerful Merlin was the key combination that would unlock the Spitfire's potential. With this partnership cemented, the Air Ministry showed renewed interest, issuing a contract for a prototype in late 1934. On the 5th of March, 1936, at Eastleigh Aerodrome near Southampton, the prototype, serial number K5054, took to the skies for the first time. At the controls was Vickers' chief test pilot, Captain Joseph "Mutt" Summers. The flight was short, but the potential was immediately obvious. Legend has it that upon landing, Summers' succinct report to Mitchell and the design team was simply, "Don't touch anything." It was clear they had created something truly special. Flight testing continued, refining the design, testing different propellers. By May 1936, K5054 was hitting speeds over 340 miles per hour, astounding performance for the era. The Air Ministry was impressed, placing an initial order for 310 aircraft just a few months later. The Spitfire was officially born. However, translating a successful prototype into mass production proved challenging. Supermarine's main factory at Woolston, Southampton, was already busy building Walrus and Stranraer flying boats. They lacked the space and resources for the large Spitfire order. Furthermore, Vickers Armstrong, Supermarine's parent company, was initially hesitant to share the complex blueprints with subcontractors, fearing loss of control and potential quality issues with the advanced stress skin construction. The first production Spitfire, K9787, didn't fly until May 1938, nearly 2 years after the initial order. Delays mounted, costs increased. To meet the demand, the government initiated the Shadow Factory scheme, setting up new production facilities managed by established companies. A massive new factory was planned at Castle Bromwich, near Birmingham, to be managed by Morris Motors, later Nuffield. But this too ran into difficulties. Building the Spitfire required different skills and techniques than car manufacturing. There were tooling problems, management issues, and spiraling costs. By the time war broke out in September 1939, Spitfire production was lagging dangerously behind schedule. While No. 19 Squadron at RAF Duxford had received the first Spitfires in August 1938, only a handful of squadrons were equipped by the start of the conflict. The pressure was immense. Then, in May 1940, Lord Beaverbrook was appointed Minister of Aircraft Production. He took decisive action, replacing the Nuffield management at Castle Bromwich with experienced personnel from Vickers Supermarine. Slowly, painstakingly, the production problems were ironed out. Castle Bromwich would eventually become the largest Spitfire factory, churning out over 12,000 aircraft, more than half the total built. But in the summer of 1940, as the storm clouds gathered across the Channel, every single Spitfire was desperately needed. The Battle of Britain, summer and autumn, 1940. The German Luftwaffe, confident after its swift victories in Poland and France, launched a massive aerial offensive aimed at destroying the Royal Air Force and achieving air superiority, the essential prelude to a planned invasion of Britain, Operation Sea Lion. Standing against the might of the Luftwaffe were the pilots of RAF Fighter Command, famously dubbed the Few by Winston Churchill. Their primary tools, the Hawker Hurricane and the Supermarine Spitfire. The Hurricane, designed by Sidney Cam, was actually the more numerous fighter in the RAF's inventory during the battle, equipping roughly 33 squadrons compared to the Spitfire's 19. It was a rugged, stable gun platform, easier to manufacture and repair due to its more traditional construction methods. Hurricanes bore the brunt of the fighting, particularly against the German bomber formations, and pilots credited them with shooting down more enemy aircraft overall during the battle than the Spitfires. But the Spitfire, specifically the Mark I and the newer Mark IIA arriving in small numbers by late summer, captured the public imagination and proved critically decisive, especially against the Luftwaffe's formidable fighter escort, the Messerschmitt Bf 109E, or Immel. The contest between the Spitfire and the Bf 109E became one of the legendary duels of aviation history. The Bf 109E was a superb aircraft in its own right. Powered by a Daimler-Benz DB601 engine, it was slightly faster than the Spitfire Mark I at higher altitudes and could climb and, crucially, dive better. Its fuel-injected engine meant it wouldn't suffer fuel starvation under negative G-forces, a momentary but potentially fatal disadvantage for the early Merlin engines with their carburetors. The Emil was also heavily armed for the time, typically carrying two 7.9 2mm machine guns and two 20mm MG-FF cannons, which packed a much heavier punch than the Spitfire's 8.303-inch Browning machine guns. However, the Spitfire had its own advantages. Its elliptical wing gave it a significantly tighter turning radius than the Bf 109. In a turning dogfight, a skilled Spitfire pilot could often get onto the tail of a Messerschmitt. While the Spitfire's 8 machine guns lacked the single-hit destructive power of the German cannons, they provided a high volume of fire, around 14 rounds per second from each gun, creating a dense cone of bullets. At lower and medium altitudes, the Spitfire Mark I was generally faster than the Bf 109E. RAF tactics evolved to exploit these differences. Where possible, the faster, higher-flying Spitfires were tasked with engaging the German fighter escorts, drawing them into turning fights where the Spitfire excelled, while the Hurricanes tackled the bombers. Pilot accounts from the Battle of Britain speak volumes about the Spitfire's handling. It was sensitive, responsive, almost an extension of the pilot's own body. While demanding, it inspired confidence. Pilots knew that if they could lure a Bf-109 into a dogfight, they had the edge in maneuverability. The psychological impact was also significant. The sight of Spitfires climbing to meet the incoming raids bolstered morale on the ground and became a powerful symbol of resistance. While the Hurricane squadrons suffered higher attrition rates, Spitfire units generally achieved a higher victory-to-loss ratio against German fighters. Over the course of the battle, from July to October 1940, Spitfires were credited with shooting down 529 enemy aircraft for the loss of 230 of their own. They didn't win the Battle of Britain alone. The Hurricane, the radar network, the ground crews, and the bravery of the pilots were all essential. But the Spitfire's performance, particularly against the best of the Luftwaffe's fighters, provided the critical edge that helped deny Germany the air superiority it needed for invasion. The threat wasn't over, but Britain had held. The Battle of Britain proved the Spitfire's fundamental quality, but it also highlighted areas for improvement. The relentless pressure of air combat drove a continuous cycle of development and refinement that would see the Spitfire evolve through an astonishing 24 major marks, plus numerous subvariants throughout World War II and beyond. This ability to adapt and improve was one of the aircraft's greatest strengths. The initial Spitfire Mark I and Mark II, armed with 8.303-inch machine guns, designated Mark IA and Mark IIA, soon faced enemies with increased armor protection. A small number of Mark IB fighters had experimented with two 20mm Hispano cannons, but early installations were unreliable, prone to jamming. The need for harder-hitting armament became urgent. This led directly to the development of the Spitfire Mark V, which would become the most numerically produced variant, with over 6,400 built. Entering service in early 1941, the Mark V was essentially a strengthened Mark II airframe fitted with a more powerful Merlin 45 series engine, producing around 1,470 horsepower. Crucially, it introduced the B-wing, mounting two Hispano cannons alongside 4.303 machine guns. This offered a much better balance of firepower. Later, the C-wing, or Universal Wing, offered even more flexibility, capable of mounting 4 cannons, or 2 cannons and 4 machine guns, and could also carry bombs. Some Mark Vs were fitted with clipped wings, their elegant elliptical tips literally sawn off, reducing wingspan from nearly 37 feet to about 32.5 feet. This slightly reduced high-altitude performance, but significantly improved the roll rate and handling at lower altitudes, making it more effective in close-quarters combat and ground attack roles. The Mark V became the RAF's standard fighter through 1941 and 1942, fighting not just over Europe but also in the desperate defense of Malta, in the North African Desert Campaign, and even reaching the Far East. However, its dominance was challenged in late 1941 with the arrival of a potent new German fighter, the Focke-Wulf FBU-190. The FDB-190, powered by a radial BMW engine, outperformed the Spitfire Mark V in almost every aspect except turning circle, particularly at medium altitudes. Its appearance caused shockwaves in the RAF. A stopgap measure involved fitting improved Merlin engines to Mark V airframes, but a more definitive answer was needed. It came in the form of the Spitfire Mark IX. Rushed into service in mid-1942, the Mark IX was essentially a Mark V airframe married to the new generation of Merlin engines, the 60 series, equipped with a revolutionary two-stage, two-speed supercharger. This dramatically boosted performance, especially at higher altitudes where the FW-190 had previously held a significant advantage. The Mark IX could climb faster, fly higher, and match the FW-190's speed. It restored parity and, in the hands of a skilled pilot, could often regain the edge. It arrived just in time for major air battles over Dieppe, and later became the backbone of fighter command during the offensive sweeps over occupied Europe, leading up to D-Day. Variants like the LF Mark 9, optimized for low altitude with a Merlin 66, and the HF Mark 9, optimized for high altitude with a Merlin 70, tailored performance further. With over 5,600 built, the Mark 9 became the second most produced Spitfire variant, and arguably one of the most important Allied fighters of the entire war. Many pilots considered it the best balance of performance and handling of all the Merlin-engined Spitfires. But the quest for performance didn't stop there. Even as the Merlin engine reached its peak, Rolls-Royce had another, even more powerful engine waiting in the wings, the Griffon. Larger in capacity than the Merlin, 37 liters versus 27, the Griffon offered a significant jump in horsepower, eventually exceeding 2,000 horsepower in later versions. Fitting this bigger, heavier engine required modifications to the Spitfire airframe, often involving a longer nose, strengthened structure, and larger radiators. The first operational Griffon-powered Spitfire was the Mark 12, which entered service in 1943. It offered blistering low-altitude speed, but was produced in small numbers. The truly definitive Griffon variant was the Mark 14. Combining the powerful Griffon 65 engine with the refined Mark 8 airframe, which had introduced improvements like a retractable tailwheel, but was mainly used overseas, the Mark 14 was a beast. Entering service in early 1944, it could reach speeds over 440 miles per hour. Its exceptional climb rate and speed made it the perfect weapon against a terrifying new threat appearing over southern England, the V-1 flying bomb, or buzz bomb. Mark 14 squadrons became highly adept at intercepting and destroying these pilotless weapons. The Mark 14 also proved highly effective against Luftwaffe fighters in the final year of the war. Later Griffon variants like the Mark 18, Mark 21, Mark 22, and the final Mark 24 featured further refinements, including redesigned wings, teardrop canopies for better visibility, and even heavier armament, typically 420mm cannons. These represented the ultimate evolution of Mitchell's original design, though many arrived too late to see significant combat in World War II. Beyond the mainstream fighter variants, the Spitfire's adaptable airframe lent itself to specialist roles. Perhaps most significantly, unarmed high-speed photo reconnaissance, PR, variants were developed early on. Stripped of guns and armor, fitted with extra fuel tanks and cameras, these PR Spitfires, like the PR Mark 4, PR Mark 11, and the high-altitude PR Mark 19, flew deep into enemy territory, relying on speed and altitude to evade interception. They provided vital intelligence throughout the war. Additionally, the need for a modern carrier-borne fighter for the Royal Navy's Fleet Air Arm led to the development of the Seafire. Early Seafires were essentially Spitfire Mark 5s fitted with arrestor hooks. Later versions incorporated strengthened undercarriages, folding wings from the Seafire Mark III onwards, and the more powerful engines found in contemporary Spitfire Marks. While challenging to operate from carriers due to their narrow undercarriage and limited forward visibility, Seafires provided crucial air cover during Allied naval operations, including landings in North Africa, Sicily, Italy, and the Pacific. The Spitfire's service wasn't confined to the skies over Britain and Northwest Europe. As production ramped up, it saw action across the globe. In the Mediterranean, Spitfires played a vital role in the defense of Malta during the siege of 1942, flying off carriers and battling Axis aircraft in desperate conditions. They fought through the North African campaign, supporting the 8th Army's advance, and provided air superiority during the invasions of Sicily and Italy. In the Far East, Spitfires arrived later in the war, but proved effective against Japanese aircraft in the Burma campaign and helped defend northern Australia against air raids. Small numbers were also supplied to Allied nations. The Soviet Union received over 1,000 Spitfires, primarily Mark V and Mark IX variants, under Lend-Lease, though Soviet pilots generally preferred the maneuverability of their own fighters like the Yak series. The United States Army Air Forces also flew Spitfires, particularly PR variants, alongside their own fighters in Europe. Even after World War II ended, the Spitfire story wasn't quite over. RAF Spitfires, particularly the later Griffon engine models and PR variants, remained in service for several years. The final operational sortie flown by an RAF Spitfire occurred on the 1st of April, 1954, when a PR Mark 19 flew a reconnaissance mission against communist guerrillas during the Malayan emergency. The Seafire continued in Fleet Air Arm service until the mid-1950s. Many other air forces around the world continued to operate Spitfires for years after the war. In total, from the first production aircraft in 1938 to the last Mark 24, delivered in 1948, 20,351 Spitfires were built, a staggering number for such a sophisticated aircraft, and more than any other British fighter before or since. Tragically, the man who started it all, R.J. Mitchell, never saw his creation achieve its wartime fame. He died from cancer in June 1937, aged just 42. His colleague, Joseph Smith, took over as chief designer and capably oversaw the Spitfire's extensive wartime development. So, what is the legacy of the Supermarine Spitfire? It was undoubtedly a superb fighting machine, beautifully designed, adaptable, and loved by most of the pilots who flew it. It was fast, agile, and in its various forms, capable of meeting and often exceeding the capabilities of its opponents throughout the long years of World War II. It was more than just metal, rivets, and engine power, though. It became a potent symbol, a symbol of British ingenuity, defiance, and the determination to fight back during the nation's darkest hour. The image of the Spitfire climbing gracefully into the summer sky became synonymous with the spirit of the few and the ultimate victory in the Battle of Britain. Its elegant lines and the throaty roar of its Merlin or Griffon engine continue to capture the imagination today. Around 70 Spitfires remain airworthy, lovingly maintained, and flown by organizations like the RAF's Battle of Britain Memorial Flight and private collectors, ensuring that future generations can still witness this legendary aircraft where it belongs, in the sky. It stands as a testament to R.J. Mitchell's vision, the skill of the engineers and workers who built it, and the bravery of the pilots who flew it into combat. It's easy to see why the Spitfire continues to fascinate us, isn't it? A perfect blend of deadly beauty and engineering prowess, born from racing pedigree and forged in the heat of global conflict. What part of the Spitfire's incredible story resonates most with you? Was it the desperate defense in 1940, the constant evolution to stay ahead, or maybe the sheer elegance of its design? Let us know your thoughts down in the comments. We love hearing the perspectives of fellow history enthusiasts. And if you want to keep exploring the legends of the air, the sea, and the land, make sure you're subscribed and have notifications turned on. We've got plenty more dives into military history coming your way, and you won't want to miss the next chapter.